Well, hello, 110ers. My name is Brian May. I'm professor of English here at Northern Illinois University, and I'll be your professor this semester in ENGL 110.0003, Literature and Popular Culture, which is focused, as I think you know by now, on the question of horror, and more specifically 19th century horror, and more specifically yet 19th century English horror. Most specifically, 19th century English horror, literary horror, that we're going to be looking at some movies. How can we not, right? My bricks and mortar office, excuse me, is in Revis Hall 321, which right now is pretty superfluous information, but I wanted to mention it anyway. I do have such an office. I don't know that we could really make use of it. I'll be making use of it. My office hours, though, this more pertinently, let me mention, from noon to 1 p.m. and by appointment. And I especially find it to be a good idea to make an appointment and to set up a time with me if you need to talk with me, as I hope you will find time to do at some point this semester. I may be asking to speak with you too at this time or that time. But every Tuesdays from noon to 1 p.m., I want to keep that hour clear. That's my intention, to keep that hour clear to set up appointments maybe for private conferences and generally for you to know when I'm available in case you need to ask me something. Okay. And of course, all this would be by way of video conferencing of one kind or another. Now, if you're looking at the syllabus, I'm looking at it. You can't see me look at it, but it's on a separate screen. I've included two email addresses for your convenience. I don't know why I included two, but I look at both of them compulsively. So I thought I'd write them both out for you. And feel free to make use of either one. What I think we should do in this introductory micro lecture, it's really more of just an introductory, kind of bit of discourse on my part for you. Not going to get into the content too much. Okay, more talk about the rigmarole of the semester. What I think we should do is go through the syllabus, right? And skipping the course description to begin with, move fairly directly to coursework, which I think is an important topic for students. What will you be doing in the class? What will be required of you? And then we'll circle back to the actual content of the course. Well, a lot of what you'll be doing is clear from a look at the course format sheet. This is on the syllabus, so it's not a separate sheet. Is going to be contributing to these weekly discussion boards that we'll be having, right? This is something probably that you've done in a lot of your other classes, and you know all about what I'm talking about. But nevertheless, let me just mention a couple of things about it, right? On a weekly basis, you will be given questions. They'll begin to appear on Friday afternoons at 12 noon. All of the questions will be in your possession, which is to say they will be posted on Blackboard in the discussion drawer, okay? And I think you know where to find that, but if you don't, let me know. You certainly will be able to find it rather readily if you just go and explore the Blackboard website devoted to our class, right? But weekly, all of the questions will be available by Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m. They'll begin to be posted, as I said, on Friday. All of them will be posted, and all the ones that will be available for that week will be posted by 5 o'clock on Sunday evenings. Then it will be up to you, the ball's in your court at that point, to choose one of the items, just one, and to write a substantial one-paragraph response by Tuesday of that week at 5 o'clock. And then by Thursday at 5 o'clock, what I would like you to do of the same week, right, is read through your fellow students' contributions of responses, okay, and comment on one of them. Just choose one of them. And by Thursday at 5 o'clock, write a brief comment on one of your classmates' responses. And by comment, I mean not just, really smart, really excellent, I agree. Or I love the way you put that, nothing that unhelpful, but rather, as I say here on the format, the course format paragraph, I guess, offer a constructively critical comment, cite evidence and support. You can offer a celebration of the wonderful point made by your classmate, or you can take issue with your classmate, as long as you do so very politely, of course, and constructively, and try to point out what maybe the classmate is overlooking, citing evidence in support of your claim, right? Cite evidence in support of your claim even if you're celebrating and exploring the idea that's already been made. So this is going to be a huge part of the class, really, and it's one of the reasons why it's worth 30% of your final grade, which is, I think you would agree, no small factor in the final grade when it's 3/10 of the grade. Now, I'm going to give everybody 2 weeks off, so to speak, okay? That it's up to you when to choose those 2 weeks. That week, you don't have to choose those weeks. You can contribute to every single discussion board that we have. And as you can tell, it's weekly, as I've been describing it. There will be a couple of weeks when we don't do a discussion board, but every week that a discussion board is due, I will expect you to participate, okay, except for 2 of them, which you can bow out during those, okay? And those are the 2 that are up to you to choose. And I suggest you wait until later in the semester when having the extra time available, left over when you're not doing the discussion board, may be spent fruitfully, maybe finishing up a paper in a different class. So husband those carefully, those 2 misses, okay, that are free, and you don't have to explain, excuse me, you just have to limit, okay, the 2 that you don't contribute to 2, because beyond that, I'll have to put a 0 instead of a 4 or a 3 or what have you. I explained, by the way, how I, basically, how I go about grading the discussion board in a separate drawer in the information drawer, a subdrawer of the information drawer, which is devoted to this. And there's a schematic and a diagram, and you can have a look at it. And most people will get 4 points because most of you, I just absolutely know you're going to just do a wonderful job. And you can offer a lot of evidence to back up your claims. You can be quoting from the texts, and you're going to have read the text carefully, and you're going to make a little argument on a weekly basis when you do your response, which is the thing that's due on Tuesday. And I just absolutely know that your Thursday comments on others' responses are also going to be just wonderful. So I'll be able to give you most of the time a full 4-point credit for that week, okay? You may have a few off weeks where maybe get 3 points, okay? Especially early on, before you know precisely maybe what is required of you, which is nothing to sweat, okay? I think people are going to do well on the discussion board. They did last semester. But it is a very important part of the class, and it does require that you pay close attention, that you get the reading done, you pay close attention to due dates, and that you get into this weekly routine, correct? You want it to become pretty much automatic. You realize that, okay, this is one of the usual weeks. It isn't the 1 or 2 unusual weeks. It's one of the usual weeks. We do have the weekly discussion board. What does that mean? Well, that means here it is, Tuesday, 5 o'clock. I've got a discussion board response due. I hope that this is something that you recognize, not at Tuesday at 5 o'clock, but more like Monday at 5 o'clock. So you have plenty of time to write up a good one. And then Thursday at 5 o'clock, again, you have the comment on another person's response. Okay, you can't comment on your own response, obviously, right? So this will be something that you just get in the habit of doing, right? And I think it's, we get this weekly routine going, and I think it's just going to take care of itself. Now, there's something else that's going to happen on a weekly basis, and that is going to be a quiz, okay? Now, there are going to be 12 of these altogether, though I may give some makeups or what have you. But typically there are 12 of them, and I count the best 10. Isn't that nice to hear? Okay. So I dropped the 2 lowest grades. That's what that means. But you have to keep in mind that the 2 lowest grades might be grades zeros that are acquired by your neglecting to take the quiz that week. Okay. Quizzes cannot be made up. It's just simply, especially with the format that we have here online, it's just absolutely too much work to make up a second quiz every week for people who didn't get around to taking the first one on time. So these quizzes are going to be due every week as well. And the quizzes will be on Wednesday. I've just worked that out precisely when I'd like you to take them. And it's listed, the one for, actually our first quiz is going to be next week. I believe I decided that Wednesday would be the day. I have it worked out. It's not that I don't know. I'm trying to remember exactly what I decided, and I believe it's on Wednesday that the quiz is due by midnight. The quizzes will take about 25 minutes to do. I'll give you 25 minutes at least to get a quiz done. So it's a brief quiz. It's about 5 or 6 items. And so you're given the 25 minutes to do these short answer items. And that's, for most people, find that to be absolutely enough time to get them done and get them done well. So that's also something you'll be doing every week on a Wednesday. And before the first quiz, I'll probably give you in fact, I will most certainly include somewhere on the website, and I'll call attention to it so you'll know about it, a practice quiz, or more a sample quiz. So you'll see the kind of thing that will be required of you. So you'll know what to expect before next Wednesday when you have your first quiz. Okay, and the quizzes will tend to be, you're going to have extra readings. You'll notice that one of the books that I asked you to purchase, I say in the past tense, asked, because I have already asked you to get busy finding these books. But one of them is that book full of essays written by contemporary critics. Those essays, when I ask you to read them on a weekly basis, will not be on the quiz. I will not be quizzing you about those essays. I will only quiz you about the Victorian literature, this 18th century literature. But the literature itself, the literary works that we read that are on the syllabus. Okay. So hope that's good news. Okay, so that's 40% of the grade, 10% for quizzes and 30% for the weekly discussion board. Let me also mention that I'm going to have you do a couple of what I call squibs. We'll talk about those as they approach. As the first one approaches, we'll talk about it in some detail, but the squib is, in fact, a brief literary analysis of the kind that you have written before, I will bet you, even if you're a science major, even if you're in STEM, you have done these, and you've done some version of them. And I'll give you some information, and maybe even a couple of samples before the first one is due, so you'll know exactly what to do and what is expected of you on these squibs. But they give you a chance to do a little independent thinking, even beyond the weekly discussion board, where you're going to be doing quite a bit of independent thinking. And they give you a chance to do so a little bit more formally and argumentatively, by way of not a substantial paragraph, but in fact 2 substantial pages. So it's a little bit more extended version of what's required of you for the weekly discussion board. At one point in the semester, what I will be doing is inviting you to revise one of the squibs. Excuse me, perhaps the better of the two. This will be towards the end of the latter part of the semester. And I'll give you 10% for just an absolutely excellent revision, expansion/revision of that squib, okay, which will be mostly just adding another page to the squib to turn out like a 3-page essay and 3 or 4-page essay. And it will be worth 10% in addition. This will be a whole independent grade of 10%. So it's this revision of one of the squibs will be worth as much as either one of the 2 squibs. Okay, it'll be another 10%. So that's the formal writing for the semester. We have slightly less formal writing going on weekly in the discussion boards, as you already know. Okay, we also have a midterm examination, which will involve some writing. It's basically an essay examination, and a final exam that's a lot like the midterm, which means it too will require some essay exams. So a fair amount of writing this semester, okay? A fair amount of critical, analytical, literary analytical writing this semester here in this 110 section. That's something you should know about up front, that it is, the course is not simply a read a bunch of literature and talk about it in class. It's also going to involve some analysis of literature that takes the form of argumentative writing on formal papers, okay? Just to make sure you know what you're getting into in the class. And I think this is pretty typical for 110 sections. We like, over here in the English department, we like our classes, all of our classes, even when they're not explicitly speaking writing classes, we like them to have a strong writing component. And as you can see, this one certainly will. Okay, well, I just said that the course is something of a writing course, and we have already, have we not, approached this issue of the course objectives. What are the objectives of the course? The phrase that is so often used these days when professors talk about their objectives in a particular course is this kind of ready-made phrase. I hope you don't find it too trite. Learning objectives. So what are they? You already know that obviously one of the things we want to have happen here is to improve your writing, right? And if you'll drop down to the final two bulleted points here in this list of learning objectives. The first of the two, which is the second to the last, the penultimate in the list. 110 being something of a writing course, students should leave the course with enhanced analytical and rhetorical skills, which I compare to like swinging a bat or a golf swing or whatever sport metaphor you would prefer. A better rhetorical golf swing, a specific aim of the course with respect to writing and discussion board commentaries as well as in exams and I say a paper, but really a series of shorter papers, is that of toning and amplifying students' individual critical voices. You want to make your voice stronger, make it more confident, make it more able, okay? Make it more, refined and strong and argumentative, right? So we'll have more authority. And one of the ways to do that is to practice. The second of the two bulleted points, which is the final bullet point here in this list, 110 being a writing course, part 2, successful students should leave the course as better self-critics as well as writers. They should be better able than they were before to identify and discuss as well as practice the qualities that make for good analytical discussion. And I give you a little list of those abstract terms that we tend to append to pieces of writing that we admire. We say that those pieces have evidentiary depth, which means that they're well evidenced. There's a lot of proof going on, okay? The proofs are strong. For any math majors in the class, you know what a proof is. Get a sense that there's a proof going on. There's some, almost like a mathematical proof going on as the paper unfolds. And there's a lot of inductive and deductive reasoning going on in the paper, and it's sound, right? We like that kind of paper a lot better than we like the other kind of paper. Paper should have coherence. It should be persuasive. Of course, that's the larger ambition. Convincing, should it be? Yes. Persuasive. Compelling. We want it to be compelling. Is it incisive in its analyses? This is just almost an arbitrary list of these terms that I've given you right here. That we, again, tend to be the issues that I'm thinking about when I'm making a judgment on the quality of the paper before me. So writing course, that's part of it. Now, it's also a literature course, obviously, right? So go to the two bulleted points that are just above the final two. We're doing this backwards. 110 being a literature course, so students should depart with stronger readerly muscles because you're going to be exercising them quite a bit this semester, right? You should leave the course with a greater capacity to make your way through dense and extended literary thickets of words. 110 being a literature course, part 2, you should also be able better to analyze literary works, whatever their period, for their structure and meaning. I think all of that is pretty self-explanatory and does not need to be expounded by me. Let's go to the top of the list of learning objectives. Students successfully completing 110 should leave the course. Specifically speaking, they should leave the course better able to distinguish the important themes and techniques on display in the individual literary texts we have studied, many of which are complex and some of which are lengthy. They should also, Dracula is not a short novel. Students should also be able to offer cogent remarks on how and why the horror subgenre of the novel developed as it did. More generally, dropping down the list, just one, to the next bulleted point. More generally, students should be able to name, characterize, and explain the nature of literary horror. The Gothic is just an example. A peculiar discursive strain that originates prior to the Victorian period and that extends beyond it, I think you would agree, into our own era. How many horror movies were made last year? Wouldn't it be interesting to know exactly how many, horror movies were made? I suppose you could even try to limit the range that you're talking about to ones made by recognized studios as opposed to indie startups. Okay. Last year, I would find that an interesting statistic, and I suspect that the number would be surprisingly large. Boy, is is horror a part of our, some would say our daily lives these days during the COVID crisis? In any event, we're going to know something about horror. If you drop to the next, and the final of the bulleted points, not in the list, but the final that has been mentioned, will be mentioned by me. More generally yet, students should be in possession by the end of the course and quite able to define the principles of a general theory of horror. So we're going to talk a little bit about, that which we talk about when we talk about horror. What do we mean by horror? What do we mean by terror? This is going to be one of the early distinctions. It's going to be made in Module 1, not the intro module with Walpole. But when we get to Radcliffe, which we will be doing in week 3, Radcliffe's The Italian, we will encounter this distinction that has been so formative and influential in the history of discussion of aesthetic fright. Okay, tends to break down aesthetic fright into these two categories of aesthetic affect, of aesthetic emotion, and that is the emotion of horror and the emotion of terror. Okay, which are very much to be contrasted, as we will see, and certainly have been contrasted by any number of theorists and even practitioners of horror literature. So there's a quick rundown on the learning objectives of the course, and it probably is about time to start talking a little bit about, we've already begun, I think, to talk a little bit about the actual content of the course. Oh wait, about the books. This is something we should talk about just very briefly. The first 2 books, of course, these 18th century Gothic novels, The Castle of Otranto and The Italian by Anne Radcliffe. These aren't the kinds of books that you can find probably down in your local Barnes and Noble. But I've been surprised, you never know. So I have included, now of course I want you to order the books that I myself have ordered for you. Well, I myself have assigned to you, but could not order for reasons that I've already mentioned earlier. Had to do with the late breaking quality of this class. So we couldn't go through the library, but these are the ones that I've assigned, and I think that they're far superior volumes, the Oxford World's Classics volumes that you see listed here. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and order those books so that you'll have these better editions of the books on hand. However, in the meantime, recognizing that it may take a little while to get the books for this reason or that reason, and we have to start reading these now, I have included a couple of pretty good, okay, online editions of these books. The Gutenberg website, which has lots of books, some of them fairly obscure. That's one of the nice things about Gutenberg. It's a pretty sound edition. It's not as good as the Oxford World's Classic edition, but I think in a pinch it will work, and so you can start to read The Castle of Otranto more or less immediately by going and clicking that link, and the same goes with the Italian. But I hope that you will have ordered the Oxford World's Classic edition of the Italian long before you would need to start, and it will be on hand so that you will not indeed have to do the online version of this text. But I wanted to mention those two, and you'll see the other books that stretch down below. Excuse me. The Shelley's Frankenstein, George Eliot, Robert Louis Stevenson. Some of these books are very familiar to you, right? You've probably seen movies made of certain of these books as well. And one of the fun things we'll be doing this semester is now and then maybe seeing a little clip from one of the movies. In a couple of cases, I might even be assigning a movie as part of what we did, our actual coursework. So you'll get credit for having a look at the book, having a look at the movie. And it might even be part of one of the writing assignments, right? So that should be kind of fun. What should I mention? Yeah, the horror reader down there, number 9, Ken Gelder's The Horror Reader, is something that we're going to be starting to make use of in a little over a week. So you want to try to get that as soon as you can as well, because that's full of all these readings that we're going to be doing on a weekly basis, not in this first week, not here in the introductory week, the intro module that you'll be doing between now and the end of next week. You will not be calling upon Gelder. You'll be looking actually at a couple of other readings that I'll be assigning to you, and that will be up on the website and made available to you. But you want to get that Gelder book. You don't want to get yourself into the position of trying to find the various essays in Gelder, some of which are available. It's a book that has collected these discussions of literary works and some film works, and has collected these to make them available to you very readily and very conveniently. They are, some of them, available out there in the world, on the web, right? But you're not going to want to saddle yourself with a weekly task of trying to find these things, okay, and spending an hour every week, trying to hunt down a copy. Much better to actually have the horror reader right there on your desk so that you can conveniently turn to it when necessary. So let me know if you're having any trouble getting these books. I mean, I think you can tell. Now, I haven't posted, I should say, what I will be calling the schematic schedule, okay, as opposed to the granular weekly schedule, which I'll be talking about in just a second. But the schematic schedule will be posted soon. And what you will see when you have a look at it is that, in fact, we're going to be reading the books pretty much in this order that you see on this page. And, we'll get to the Invisible Man towards the end of the very end of the semester, and Dracula towards the end of the semester, etc. So it's not as necessary that, for example, you go and find Dracula right now, that you go and buy that book. I would go ahead and just get this out of the way now. Just buy all the books now. But if you're, for whatever reason, inclined, or it's necessary, maybe for financial reasons, to stagger your book purchasing, the list here should give you a sense of what to buy when, what to buy early, and what to maybe hold off on buying if you can't get it up front. Oh wait, about the books, and oh wait, part 2 about the schedule. I offer 2 schedules. I offer what I will be calling a schematic schedule that is in the information drawer, which has not yet been posted. I also offer, and this is something that is offered every week, what I call the granular schedule, the granular modular schedule. You'll hear me referring to it in those terms. And here's an example of it. This is, in fact, our actual granular modular schedule for the first 2 weeks of our class. It's through the Friday the 22nd, 9 days from today. So 2 weeks, including this week, okay? And what you will see, that the purpose of this granular schedule is to give you a pretty, I think, workable, pretty readable layout, literally, a visual representation of what we're going to be doing and when we're going to be doing it as the days unfold over the course of the 2-week period of the module. And it's pretty granular in the sense that it breaks it down for you into the little molecules or grains of what I'm asking you to do day by day, okay, over these 2 weeks. And you'll get one of these for every module. So this is the intro module, which I'm having you read Walpole, module number 1, which will be available almost certainly on Friday the 22nd. I tend to give you the new granular modular schedule for the next module when that module begins. So module 1 will begin on 122, right, at the end of this intro module. When you get that, you will see it'll look a lot like this, except that what it will do is, in fact, lay it out for the week or 2. Some of them are going to be 2-week modules, some of them 1-week modules. It will lay it out for the week or two that are coming, right, at that time that you receive the module. So it's time for you to get this one. It's, if class had been going on, had already started like last week, you would have received this last Friday. But here it is. And you will see it's a kind of it's more like a week and a half than 2 weeks. But the gist of it is that this granular modular schedule lets you know exactly what to do and when things are due on a daily basis. Now, for example, over here in the left-hand column, topics to read, watch, as opposed to the right-hand column, learning activities and assessments. Over there on the left, it tells you how to prepare, right, and when to get certain things done so that you can do the things, the activities and assessments that are required of you, which are listed in the right-hand column. So we'll just sort of walk through this quickly. Like today, what I would like you to do is by 5 p.m. have procured a copy of Walpole's Castle of Otranto and begun reading it, right? So that by Friday at noon, you're ready for those discussion questions that you'll be start to receive Friday at noon o'clock, 12 o'clock, right? Looking over in the right-hand column, I just repeat this business about the discussion questions begin to be posted. This is something I mentioned over in the left-hand column as well. By noon on Friday, and you have all the discussion questions in your possession. Typically, there will be 3 discussion questions. You will have all 3 of them in your possession by 5 o'clock on Sunday, okay? And what this will enable you to do is begin to address these questions and begin to form your response, which is due on Tuesday at 5 p.m., 119 coming up, right? Now, going back onto the left-hand column, you see that by Wednesday at 2 p.m. at the absolute latest, I want you to finish reading Walpole's Castle because you have a quiz on it. You'll see over in the right-hand column where all the, it's like the right-hand column is when I'm talking about not like what to do in prep for assessments and actual activities that tend to be graded, but the activities and assessments themselves. So indeed, the quiz is listed over there just as a discussion response, due date and time. We're listed just up above. Here I have the quiz. I talk a little bit about the quiz here and tell you some important details about it, right? So dropping down to that same Wednesday, I say watch a video, a PowerPoint micro lecture on Walpole, which will be ready for you next week at this time, I'm hoping. And usually on Wednesdays, sometimes a little bit later due to circumstances beyond my control. Let's just leave it at that. Mostly have to do with YouTube vagaries, okay? So you watch the video micro lecture, you're given typically a couple of days to get that under your belt. And then on Thursday, it's a nice idea to watch if you possibly can, to watch the lecture, the micro lecture before you have to write the comment. It won't be absolutely necessary to do so though. So if some of you will probably be writing your comments even before the video PowerPoint micro lecture comes out, that's fine. But it can also be kind of helpful. But by Thursday at 5 o'clock, you'll see I would like the comment on a fellow student's answer response to be posted, okay? And for next week, this week and next week, that's it. And you see how it lays it out for you. So you know exactly where you stand day by day and what's due and when it's due. And there's no mystery. And what I should think is that there's also no anxiety about, okay, what should I be doing? What should I be doing? Now, I mentioned this business about a schematic schedule, right? This is an example that you have here facing you. This is available in the content drawer, and it's an example of the kind of thing I'll be posting, as I said. For every module, you'll get a new one of these, right? And so by the end of the semester, you might have 12 or 13 or 14 of them. Maybe only 11 or 12. It depends on how I'm going to break down those later weeks, which I'm still deciding. So again, some of them will be 2-week modules. It depends on certain details. We have a bigger class than I thought we were going to have. Originally we had 10 students in the class, now we have 20. So the class is twice as big as was originally planned, which is just great, but which does change things ever so slightly in how we will be proceeding. But it changes things in ways that don't really matter to you because you didn't know what I was originally planning, so it's nothing for you to be concerned about. In any event, you've got here the granular modular schedule that you'll be receiving on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. There is also this thing that I was calling a moment ago, the schematic schedule. And again, I haven't yet posted that. You'll find that in the information drawer, and you will see it there. You'll see the heading for it. I just haven't made it available to you yet because I'm still, again, as I mentioned a moment ago, still deciding a couple of things that have to do with what we do at the very end of the semester. Okay, so just to mention that, the advantage of it is that it gives you a view down the road a bit, okay? And it's your conventional syllabus that lays out the whole semester for you. That's what that is. That's what the schematic schedule is. And we have these important, it's more than just a supplement, but let's call them that. These important granular modular supplements that show up every week or two. Typically every week, maybe every other week when we have a 2-week module, okay? So you're going to want to pay attention to both of these schedules. And I think what you will find is that instead of confusing you, they tremendously clarify exactly where you stand in the semester ongoing. I mean, the advantage of the schematic schedule is, for example, it tells you when the squibs are due, okay? And it tells you when the midterm is scheduled. And all of those details are, of course, very important to have in sight before, for example, the granular modular schedule for that week comes out and surprises you by suddenly springing out on you. I don't like to do that to students, and I promise not to do it to you. I will not be springing assignments on you. You will know, and you'll know pretty soon, probably the next day or two when the schematic schedule comes out. So that's the end of this overview of the nitty-gritty of the course, and the micro lecture has gone on at this point. It's an introductory micro lecture, but it's losing its status as a micro lecture, perhaps you've noticed. So I don't want to spend a lot more of your time right now, discussing things having to do, for example, with the content of the course, because we're going to be getting into that content very shortly. And the best way to get into the content of the course is to have you start reading, right? That being said, go to the next plate. That being said, how can we resist, right? Given the content of this course, how can we resist? We have to get into it, don't we? This business of the Gothic is what we're going to be starting with, right? And the Gothic, the micro lecture on the Gothic and on Walpole in particular, that will be coming next week. We're going to be exploring some of the material that is adumbrated here in this opening paragraph that gets into the where the term came from, the word Gothic, which originally referred to the Goths, an early Germanic tribe, and so on. So you'll hear a little bit about that next week. But this week, as you begin reading the book, right, once you've procured the book, and once you perhaps, if you can't get a hold of a hard copy, maybe you have, or your ordered copy has not come in yet, maybe you print out the first 50 pages or something of Walpole's The Castle of Otranto, which I strongly suggest as opposed to reading it online, because you're going to want to take notes and whatnot, right? You know, you have a quiz on this material, so you want to prepare for the quiz by, in fact, mastering some of the details of the book. By the way, the quizzes are open book quizzes, but you're not given so much time that you could like read the book for the first time in order to figure out the quiz. Just mentioning that in passing. But you get a copy of The Castle of Otranto by hook or by crook, and again, I strongly suggest that you take notes on the document itself. Even if you print it out, you could do that. You start reading. The sooner the better. I say by 5 o'clock tonight. Wouldn't it be nice to, this evening even, to get going on it? It's not a very long text, but it is kind of complicated, and some of the paragraphs are kind of overlong, and you will find that at times you'll need to reread to make sure that you're getting what's going on in the book. But in any event, we'll be talking about Walpole as well. The Gothic in general, Walpole in particular. I'm not going to tell you that Walpole invented the Gothic, but I will tell you that his book, The Castle of Otranto, that you're going to be reading, initiated this species of novelistic discourse, the Gothic novel, in the 18th century, pretty much at mid-century. And after Walpole wrote his book, it's almost as though he invented a whole new literary subgenre. I just said he didn't invent it precisely. We'll get into some of that nuance maybe as well in the micro lecture coming. Well, what do I want you to, as you pick up the book and begin to read it, what do I want you to look at? What do I want you to pay attention to or keep an eye out for? Well, have a look at this, what's underlined here in the second paragraph. And I think it will point us in the direction of maybe some purposefulness as we go about reading. I think we'll be reading for pleasure, but also for instruction, right? As Abrams here says in his description of the Gothic novel, some writers followed Walpole's example by setting their stories in a medieval period. Others set them in a Catholic country, especially Italy or Spain. The locale was often a gloomy castle furnished with dungeons, subterranean passages, and sliding panels. The typical story focused on the sufferings imposed on an innocent heroine by a cruel and lustful villain, and made bountiful use of ghosts, mysterious disappearances, and other sensational and supernatural occurrences, which in a number of novels, especially once we get to Radcliffe, you will see this to be the case, turned out to have natural explanations. The principal aim of such novels was to Now, we're talking here more generally, not just about Walpole, right? Such novels as Walpole gave rise to by way of writing The Castle of Otranto. The principal aim of such novels was to evoke chilling horror by exploiting mystery in a variety of horrors. Okay, there's the term horror that shows up. Many of them are now read mainly as period pieces, but the best opened up to fiction the realm of the irrational and of the perverse impulses and nightmarish terrors that lie beneath the ordinary surface of the civilized mind. That's quite a mouthpiece. I'd like you to meditate on this material that I have here underlined as you make your way through Walpole, and see to what extent you believe this to be an accurate description of Walpole's The Castle of Otranto itself, which gave rise to a kind of genre, a subgenre of the novel, in which a lot of these features show up. Okay, you will notice I have. So that's one thing to do is keep your eyes open for sliding panels, subterranean passages, gloomy castles furnished with dungeons. Elements of that typical story focused on the sufferings imposed on an innocent heroine by a cruel and lustful villain. Do we have a cruel and lustful villain in Manfred? He was see as, in a sense, a villain of the text, villain of the piece. So do that, and keep your eye open, keep your mind open to the possibility that, in fact, the subgenre given rise to by The Castle of Otranto was in some ways a kind of stiffening and simplifying of The Castle of Otranto itself. And we see that, don't we? We see like a really good, a really amazing gangster movie, like The Godfather or something like that, giving rise to a genre, a subgenre of gangster movies, no one of which is ever as good as the original. Sometimes the feeling that you have. We know that that's not necessarily the case. I mean, if you look just at horror itself, for my money, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is as good a horror movie as was ever made. And it comes very late, in the history of the genre. Horror movies had been made for decades before this film came along. So, that's not a hard and fast rule that the book that invents the subgenre is always superior to the subsequent books that constitute that subgenre as such, okay? It's not necessarily the case, but in any event, keep your eyes open for, I guess the question would be the extent to which the description here offered by Abrams fits this original Gothic novel, The Castle of Otranto. The second thing I would like you to do, now of course I'm anticipating some of the questions that I will be asking on Friday that you already know to look for. This coming Friday by noon, they'll start to show up. So I don't want to scoop myself here, and the questions I'll be asking you on Friday will be more specific than these very general aims of reading that I'm now assigning. But here's the second such aim of reading that I want to go ahead and assign anyway, okay? As you begin the book and as you begin to read it. This business here that's highlighted, the principal aim of such novels was to, what's the principal aim, do you think, of this novel, as opposed to such novels as it gave rise to? What's the principal aim? What's a theme? What's the compelling kind of insight into the nature of human experience offered by The Castle of Otranto? That strikes me as a really good question to bear in mind and to allow to percolate back there and to, never get off the stove, but maybe sit on the back burner as you go about reading the book. Now, I want to let you go. I've kept you long enough for an intro lecture. And so I will do so at this time. I'm looking forward to meeting you all, as I said, and you'll hear back from me Friday by noon. By the way, there's one little assignment I've given you that you could do now, even before you read, is I've told you a little bit, actually I haven't told you much about myself, but you've spent a half an hour with me, listening to me, so you probably already know a little something about me. I don't know much about you at this point, and we don't know much about each other. So I've invited you to, for example, if you want, you don't have to do this, post a picture of yourself by hitting reply. If you take a look at the intro module, there's already an intro module item posted under discussions. You could go to it, you could hit reply and tell us a little bit about yourself, a couple of sentences. You don't have to give us much. Just give us a little sense of, like Maybe you've got a favorite horror movie. That might tell us something about you, right? Maybe you've got a favorite horror book. You want to tell us about it a little bit. Tell us why it's your favorite. Just give us some little bit of personality, right? As a means of, I don't know, working against this tide of abstraction and impersonality, which is online learning. So I would just love it if I went on the discussion board Friday at about 2 o'clock and I found 20 pictures and 20 little bios having to do with you. You don't have to give personal information, but just give us a little sense of who you are and what you like, especially when it comes to this kind of material we're going to be doing. And it would maybe also be kind of fun here as we start the semester to get a little sense of who we all are. Okay, see you then. Take care and have a good few days.